Welcome back to Home Improvement Woodworking. I'm here on the basement floor of my 1896 Victorian home. You can see the floor is pretty crappy. I'm going to transform this laundry room from a crappy floor to a happy floor using subfloor panels. I'm going to tell you why I use these over other products and how easy it is to use for one person to do this job. Stick with me, I'll show you how it's done.
We run a furniture restoration business and love older homes. Over the years, we've renovated and updated our homes, one of which was featured in a national magazine. We have now purchased our dream home, a Queen Anne Victorian in a historic small town. It has some beautiful character but needs updating. Follow along on our journey as we improve and update this home. Welcome to Home Improvement Woodworking.
I've done a little prep work on this floor here. You can see there's some new cement across the threshold here. This is the doorway. This is what it looked like before. So there used to be some framing in there that someone had previously pulled out. Now this floor has a number of issues with it. One of them I'm going to show you. This will be a future project coming up. You can see under here, it looks like something's erupting from the floor. I think we've got some tree roots that might be coming up through the basement floor, but you'll see that in a future project. So here, we've got some subfloor panels that I'm putting down, and this is the product. They're 2 feet by 2 feet, and the reason that I like them is because they have plastic underneath, and they have the surface that allows the plastic to stand off of the concrete. Now this is a wet basement. We do expect some water to come in the spring, and that'll allow the water to run underneath the subfloor without getting the subfloor wet. And more importantly, it keeps the appliances off of the wet floor. So I'll show you how I start putting these together and why I'm choosing this product over other products that are out in the market. You might be wondering why I'm doing this work when I know I've got a wet basement. Well, this house doesn't have gutters on it. So once I get that done in the spring, hopefully I'll deal with the wet basement issue. In the meantime, I have a brand new freezer here that I like to protect my investment. Moving to a small town, we've learned to appreciate our local home hardware store. This is the best hardware store I've ever been in. They've got things such as housewares, but they've also got appliances, and this is where we purchased our freezer and had it delivered once we moved in. They've got things such as luggage, frozen foods. They've got great displays of how things are built, as well as the traditional paint that you'd expect in a hardware store. We were pleasantly surprised to find local products being displayed, and for the outdoor enthusiasts and cottagers, they've got all their products and the biggest Yeti collection I've ever seen. If you're traveling across Highway 7, I recommend stopping in at Perth Home Hardware. It's definitely worth a visit. I've laid down 2 rows of the subfloor panels, so I've now got the freezer on here. I can level it up and plug it in. And you can see just how easy these are to manage. This compared to other products that are on the market where you roll out plastic and then you put a 4x8 sheet of plywood down. That's great if you're a contractor, you've got a lot of people around, but I'm working by myself. I'm going to show you just how easy it is to put these down and how quickly it goes together. These panels have either a groove or a tongue on the side. So 2 sides, here and here, are tongues and the other 2 are grooves. So I start the wall by putting 1 tongue on one wall, 1 tongue on the other wall, and that makes it easy to put this together. So I use a soft mallet here to tap them in, and the reason that you want the tongues against the wall is because you don't want to be tapping against them because you'll damage them. So what I'm doing here is just lining it up into that groove and then tap it in place. See how easy that is? Now, I've got a gap here. I need to put a 2x4 in here. Typically you'd have a much smaller gap here, but I want to see water channeling underneath here as I go through and understand how this house works. So I'll put a spacer in here and we'll start putting the panels down. I put the spacer in snug, so as I tap against these, it's got something to push against. There are spacers on this wall as well, so that everything is kept in place. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, line up this edge here and gently start tapping it in. And then what I'll do is line up this edge over here and gently tap it in. Okay, let's do the rest. Now when you get to an end where you need to cut it, I'll show you a technique for measuring this. So here I've got the tongues. This is the way I would normally attach it. I need this section in there. If you turn it 180 degrees, what you can do is line it up to where you need it. So just line up these surface edges, not the tongue, the surface edges, and then mark it. And this is what I want to cut off. So when I cut it and bring it back, I've got a piece that's the right size. So we'll take this to the saw. There are several ways that you can cut these subfloor panels. They're plastic and wood, so any wood cutting blade will work for you. Now I'm just setting up this workshop in this house that we moved into, and I've got a dust collector hooked up to a sliding compound miter saw. So this allows me to cut out 12 inches, and then I can flip this around and cut the other 12 inches on the other side. It makes for quick work. The other options would be using a table saw. You can rip them on the table saw, or using a circular saw. Now if you don't have power tools, you can also use a hand saw to cut through these. I just recommend that you use a sharp one so it makes for less work. So we can now install this piece, and because there's more friction on this longer edge here, what I do is wiggle that in, get it nice and tight, and then what I can do is just tap it in from the end, and we're good. Now back here I've got a seam that isn't quite tight. A technique for dealing with that is to wedge something in there. So you can see this 2x4 here isn't quite fitting, but if I tap it in, it tightens up this edge. Now for the next row here, if I were to lay out a full panel, what I'd have is 4 panels with an intersection right here, which would make for a weaker floor. What I want to do is stagger that joint so I've got a stiffer floor, which means I start with a half panel at the start here. I'll put this in, and then I can lay down the rest of the row. Gotten to the point here where I need to cut a few more pieces and the door's in the way. You can see here a door like this needs to be undercut so it's shorter, but this door is looking rather dungeness, so we're going to take it off permanently. In an area like this, what I do is give myself enough of a gap here, and then I measure from this corner over here how much I need to take off on this side. So I've got 2 inches here I need to take off, and then I'll line this side up, and here I want to be able to see this channel here because I think this is where the water runs through. So I'm going to say about a foot, 12 inches there. So I'll trim this corner off and put it in place. In areas that are uneven, like in this hallway here, you see there's some springiness. There are plastic shims that you can put underneath these to help remove that springiness. Now this isn't going to be a finished floor at this point. This is allowing us to use this space and protect the appliances that are here until we figure out the water issues. So as I mentioned, there's a gap around the whole edge here. This will allow me to see the water flowing, and then once we get the gutters on the house, we can make sure that we've got a dry basement before finishing off the space. There's potential that we can uncover part of this wall here and see some of the original stonework, but there's also potential to insulate the walls and make the house more energy efficient. There's one more benefit in adding a subfloor to a basement floor, and that's R value. If you're to put laminate on a subfloor like this, it will be warmer than if you put it directly on the slab in the wintertime. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to follow along all the projects we've got going on in this Victorian home, click on subscribe and turn on all notifications. That way you'll get notified every time we publish a video. Thanks for watching.